So hi everyone, I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to my submission. I'm going to start my talk right now and give you guys an idea of what it'll look like. So right now, I just want you guys to just make a list of the challenges that you're going through. And if you can circle the top three that you feel that are most important and just label it from 1 to 10, that would be awesome. So 1 being like, it's the easiest. You're not that fearful at all. But 10 is like you want to prioritize this. You're feeling a bit more anxious about. We're going to revisit this later, and I want to just make this an interactive activity. Okay, so back to this topic about resiliency. I'm going to talk about a bit about my life and how I overcame some challenges and how this may apply to your life too and what you can take from it. So here's a little context about myself and my family. So I grew up in a family where my parents had always worked. They worked in a Chinese restaurant, and they had involved my siblings and I at a young age to just help out whenever we can. Besides that, and on the side, when we were little, we would always have to just take care of ourselves because my parents had always worked. But whenever we could, we would help out at the restaurant. My grandma came here once in a while over to my household to just take care and make sure some meals were prepped for us. But essentially, we were mainly on our own. My grandma got more ill and had more problems with her eyes and also her blood pressure. So she moved out and lived with my uncle. But throughout just elementary and middle school, I would be the primary caretaker, while my sisters were just off doing their activities and focusing on getting into college. And that just required a lot of just patience, listening, and understanding. And that's just a little something that I took from just being there with my grandma and learning that responsibility at a young age. So essentially, over time, I had this responsibility, and I learned this innately when I was young. And so I became more disciplined. Later on in college, that was the thing that I remember most, and I feel like that would relate to you guys, to anyone who's watching or listening to this talk. Later on in college, I had suffered on top of my responsibilities already with my family and helping them out. I went through an unfortunate sexual assault. It was out in public, and it was by a sex offender, a random guy that was just out on the streets, and I was in the middle of the bus stop at the Pitt Union, and I got assaulted, and I I got away just in the nick of time, but it was definitely tough, and that was something that I had to learn to cope with through the activities that I would do. And on top of this, I was also stalked by someone else, and that's a whole nother story. But throughout all those incidents, I've learned to stay strong and just keep a smile on. And so some of the tactics that I've learned and I've taken away from this was to just focus on things that I could improve on daily. So whenever I was going through all these stresses and emotional distress and outlooks and whatnot, I would seek out help. And whether that be therapy help or reaching out to professors or just taking that one step, I would go and do so. So I remember one moment when I was initially assaulted, I was just so overwhelmed. And my first reaction to that would be, or was, to reach out to my professor, whom I established a working relationship in a research methods course. And I remember her just listening and being patient and just encouraging me to come whenever I wanted to go seek her out. There's a huge stigma in Chinese culture with assault, so my parents weren't as reliable as support for that, but I went out and sought that out. And that's just one step I took to get something that I needed. I pushed myself and I just listened to the people around me, and I remember listening to TED Talks and just listening to motivational speaking on the side to give me that encouragement. And that's something that I believe that you guys could take away too. So whatever you're going through with your own life, if you can just listen and just listen to positive talk and rewire that natural programming of just thinking negative, that's one step. That's the first step to healing, I believe, is just getting that positive speaking and positive help in your mind. So that's how I got my first step towards self-healing, if I would put it that way. I relied on people, so I wouldn't say it was exactly self, but the taking that step and taking the accountability towards acknowledging that pain and acknowledging where I needed to improve and work on. That's something that I learned. So by doing so, I took the first step, right? And later on, I realized that I had a huge passion for songwriting. So this passion for music and songwriting, it didn't just come out of nowhere. So I was always a musician. In high school, I started teaching myself guitar. I really loved it. But after the assault, I realized that I lost my voice for a while. I was not motivated to do that. And throughout all these incidents and whatnot, I reacted the same way to, I believe, normal people who undergo traumatic events would react. So I didn't feel motivated, and I was really hard on myself, and I didn't know how to go to class for a while. I went to class, but I was just a hollow shell. And to figure that out, I just reconnected with songwriting. And to do this, I essentially forced myself to do things I loved. I remember just making a list, just figuring out how to get back the credits. Because I remember I really wanted to double major or minor and major in psychology. My background is in psychology, by the way, but I really wanted to do psychology and sociology. And at the time, I realized that I was not healthy. I had that awareness because I kept talking to my professor, and she realized how stressed out I was. And I made that list in front of her and just had it in the back of my mind of what I can do to better myself. And music was one thing that I realized and that she encouraged me to do and to reconnect with. And that's what I did. So I took my first college courses in piano, bass guitar, guitar cross registering at Carnegie Mellon. In that, I took it in those fields, and I fell in love with music again. I learned theory. I learned things I didn't know before because I was self-taught. It was just amazing, and I still keep up with this passion now. And again, that's something that's a menial thing that you guys can do. You can make that list and go back to that and reference that, because that's something that you want to look at and reference and set a small goal every day to do. Another thing that I realized that really helped me was just keeping yourself accountable, making time to do things. So just taking like 2 minutes out of your day to practice, whatever that may be. For me, it was music, so I would look at music theory, and that's what I do right now. And if I really wanted to just learn a new language, I would use my Duolingo app. So that's something that I encourage you guys to do. So whatever you're passionate about, do that. Take time and make time, because those small differences, they build up over time. And right now, like I've reconnected with music in those span of 2 years. So this all happened when I was a sophomore. I never thought I would go and pick up a bass guitar. I self-taught myself guitar and piano, but I didn't know the theory behind it. I never knew that I could read notes, and now I can. So those small differences, they add up, and that's something that I really encourage you guys to look at. And now just looking back at your goals, so look back to that list and look back to the challenges that you guys want to do and you guys are facing right now. Think about the small differences that you guys can make every day just to work towards that, because I guarantee you that those small differences that you make in your own lives, they pay off and they add up. And for my example, just giving you guys one last example, I never thought I'd get into acting. I met people and forced myself to just meet new people and to get different mindsets on how to distract myself from what I was going through. So going through the pain of the assault, I realized that to counter that and to facilitate my music more, I need to learn and gain more perspective. So I took acting classes, acting in the way where I'm cast as an extra, and I'm posting myself as an extra and just like trying to get auditions through that. And I've stood in for Margaret Cho. That's my claim to, I guess, whatever you guys could call it. But this is just a short version of my talk, and I hope you guys consider me. And thank you for listening. Sorry the end was rushed, but yeah, thanks.